She brushed against me, smiled, and said, "Oops or not, I should have laughed it off." Instead, that single touch changed everything between us. The story begins with a return, the kind that stirs nostalgia and makes the air feel different. The narrator, now in his mid-20s, steps back into a classroom that once shaped him. It's familiar yet foreign. The chalkboard still smells faintly of dust, the fluorescent lights hum, but he notices details he never cared for as a student. The warmth of afternoon sunlight spilling through the windows, the faint scent of old books clinging to the walls. He's here not as a boy anymore, but as a man, asked to help out for the day as an assistant, a guest in a space that used to belong to him in a very different way. Then she appears, his former teacher. She's in her early 40s now, and if time has left its mark, it has only made her presence more graceful, more striking. She carries herself with the same calm authority, but there's a softness in her expression he doesn't remember from before. For her, this is another ordinary afternoon, but for him, her presence pulls every detail into sharper focus. She greets him warmly, almost too casually, with a smile that flickers between professional and personal. He feels the old dynamic tugging at them, teacher and student, yet at the same time something in the air doesn't quite fit that label anymore. The lesson unfolds, students filing out one by one when the bell rings. He stays behind, gathering stray papers, moving chairs back into neat rows. She steps past him to collect a folder from the front desk. And then it happens. Something so small it could have been nothing, but it isn't. As she brushes past, her arm grazes his. It's the lightest touch, barely there, but it sends a ripple through him. He stiffens slightly, caught between instinct and awareness. She doesn't immediately pull back. Instead, she glances at him, the corner of her lips curving into a half-smile. "Oops," she says softly, like a slip of the tongue. Then her eyes hold his for just a second longer than necessary. Or not. The words hang in the air, light and teasing, but charged with something else entirely. He doesn't know if it's a joke, a test, or an accident she decided not to take back. All he knows is that it lingers. The sound of her voice wraps around him as much as the brush of her arm did. And suddenly, the classroom feels too small, the air too heavy with meaning. She turns back to her folder as though nothing happened, leaving him to replay it in his mind, caught between disbelief and the quiet thrill of what it might mean. In that moment, a boundary shifts, not broken, not crossed, but blurred just enough to change everything. The classroom, once buzzing with chatter and scraping chairs, is now emptied out. The silence that follows the final bell feels almost unnatural, like the room is holding its breath. He lingers, stacking a few stray textbooks, sliding a chair back into place, not in a hurry to leave. Part of him wants to be useful, but another part doesn't want this moment, this proximity to her, to end too quickly. She notices, of course. She always noticed. That was her gift as a teacher, an eye for detail, an instinct for people. She stands at her desk, flipping through papers, her glasses slipping down slightly before she pushes them back up with the ease of habit. Without looking up, she says lightly, "You don't have to stay, you know. Most people run the moment the bell rings." He chuckles, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "Maybe I'm not most people anymore." That makes her glance up. A quick smile touches her lips. Not the polite smile she gives students, but something warmer. She tilts her head as if reassessing him, as if noticing what she might have missed before. "No, I suppose you're not." She asks if he can help carry a stack of assignments to the cabinet. It's a simple request, but the way she passes the pile into his hands makes it feel intimate. Their fingers brush again, and though she doesn't comment this time, he notices her pause a fraction too long before letting go. The two of them fall into easy conversation. She asks about his life since graduation, and he answers honestly. College, uncertainty, half-formed ambitions. He speaks more like himself now than he ever did in her classroom. Freer, unburdened by the need to impress. She listens intently, leaning against her desk, her arms folded but her posture relaxed. Her laughter comes easily, softer than he remembers, and it feels as though the years between them have collapsed into this quiet evening. For a moment, the classroom feels transformed. The rows of desks, the chalkboard, the clock ticking on the wall. None of it feels academic anymore. It feels like a backdrop to a conversation that could have happened anywhere, one that belongs to two adults rather than teacher and former student. At one point, she leans close to point out a misfiled paper in his stack, her hand brushing his again. It's fleeting, but it jolts him just the same. He wonders if she feels it too. Her expression doesn't give much away, but there's a softness in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that something subtle has shifted. When the last paper is tucked away, she exhales as though a weight has lifted. "Thank you," she says, her tone sincere, almost personal. Then, after a pause, she adds, "It's nice, having someone to talk to after hours." Her words are simple, but to him, they carry a weight far heavier than their casual delivery. He realizes he doesn't want to leave, not yet. And though neither of them says it aloud, it's clear, the boundaries of this room, and of what they are to each other, are beginning to blur. The late afternoon light has faded to gold, casting long shadows against the school's tiled floors. As they leave the classroom together, the echo of their footsteps fills the hallway. Steady, unhurried, as though neither of them is in a rush to end the day. She carries a stack of books tucked under one arm, balancing her handbag with the other. He notices the way her shoulders tense slightly from the weight, and without hesitation, he reaches for the books. "Here, let me," he says. She hesitates for half a second, as though about to protest, then lets him take them. "You really don't have to play the gentleman," she teases, though her voice is gentler than her words. "Maybe I want to," he replies with a grin. Her lips twitch, like she's trying not to smile too much. That's a dangerous habit. The phrase lingers between them, both casual and not. They step outside into the cool air, the quiet of the campus after hours pressing around them. The world feels stripped down. No students, no clamor, just the sound of wind rustling through trees and the soft scuff of their shoes on the pavement. He adjusts the stack of books in his arms, stealing a glance at her. The way the fading sunlight touches her hair, the faint shadow it casts along her cheekbones, makes her seem less like the teacher and more like just a woman walking beside him. He feels the thought almost as a betrayal, yet he can't shake it. She laughs suddenly at something small he says, something about how heavy the books are, and in her laughter she reaches out. Her hand brushes his arm, light and brief, but it lingers just a breath longer than it should. Could have been accidental, but it doesn't feel like it. He doesn't move away. Instead, he lets the moment sit between them, like an unspoken secret. The walk stretches longer than it needs to, neither mentioning the most direct path. They let their steps fall into rhythm, the kind of silent synchronization that feels intimate without ever being declared. At one point, she stops, adjusting the strap of her bag. He pauses too, waiting, and when her eyes meet his, there's a flicker of something, hesitation, perhaps, or recognition. She looks away quickly, focusing on her bag as though it demands all her attention. But the air has already shifted. He wonders if she's thinking the same thing he is, how these small touches, these moments of closeness, carry far more weight than they should. By the time they reach the faculty parking lot, the books feel lighter in his arms, though his chest feels heavier. She takes the stack back from him with a quiet, "Thank you," her fingers brushing his once more. This time, neither of them jokes. Neither of them calls it an accident. They just hold each other's gaze for a breath too long, and then let it go. And in that silence, in that unspoken acknowledgement, a line has been crossed. Not boldly, not recklessly, but crossed all the same. The evening drifts into that in-between hour when the world grows hushed but the night hasn't fully taken over. Instead of parting ways in the parking lot, she suggests they grab a quick coffee. Her voice is casual, but her eyes carry something else, the faintest flicker of hesitation, as though she's asking a question she's not sure she should. He agrees instantly, not out of politeness, not even out of curiosity, but because the idea of walking away from her now feels impossible. They end up in a small cafe tucked just off the main street, the kind of place that feels half-forgotten yet comforting. Inside, the air is warm, scented with roasted beans and faint vanilla. A single lamp glows at their corner table, softening the edges of the moment. For the first time all day, the world around them feels private. She slips off her coat and folds it neatly on the chair beside her, a small act that seems oddly intimate. He sits across from her, suddenly aware of how adult this all feels. Two people meeting after work, sharing coffee, talking not as teacher and student but as man and woman. The conversation begins lightly. She asks about his life since graduation, his studies, the small victories and frustrations of finding his path. He speaks freely, more open with her than he expected. She listens intently, not the way teachers listen to students, but as if every word carries weight. Then slowly the tone shifts, her laughter quiets, her gaze drifts, and she says, almost to herself, "Teaching feels different these days." He tilts his head, encouraging her to go on. She sighs, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. It's not the work, it's the silence after it, the part no one talks about. When the room is empty, when the students go home, it's just me. And sometimes that feels heavier than I expected it to. Her honesty hangs between them, delicate and raw. He feels the urge to reach across the table, to place his hand over hers, but he restrains himself. Instead, he offers words that carry their own weight. "You were the one teacher who made me believe I was capable of more than I thought. I don't think you realize the impact you've had, and not just on me, but on so many." Her eyes lift to meet his, and for a long moment, she holds his gaze. There's something unguarded there, a flicker of vulnerability that wasn't present before. "Did you ever?" She stops, shakes her head slightly, then tries again. "Did you ever think of me differently back then?" The question catches him off guard, but he doesn't flinch. His voice is steady, low. "Yes, more than I could ever admit." Silence. Only the faint hum of the cafe surrounds them. Her lips part as though to reply, but no words come. Instead, she offers a small, knowing smile, soft, tinged with something like relief, or maybe recognition. The air between them shifts once more, no longer filled with playful accidents or casual conversation. Now it carries something undeniable, the acknowledgement that they have stepped into dangerous, tender territory, and neither seems ready to turn back. The cafe feels warmer now, though neither of them has touched their drinks in a while. The conversation has gone quiet, but not in the way silence usually does. This silence is charged, as if every unspoken word has taken up space between them. She's the first to break it, leaning back in her chair, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that feels almost protective. Then she lets out a quiet laugh, though it doesn't sound entirely genuine. "You know, we're probably wandering into dangerous territory here." Her tone is playful, but there's an edge underneath, a note of warning laced with vulnerability. He doesn't smile right away. He lets the weight of her words sit, then answers carefully, "Maybe, but I don't want you to think I'm here to play with something serious. I respect you too much for that." His voice is steady, but inside, his heart is hammering. He doesn't want to say too much to overwhelm her. Yet he knows he can't backtrack either. The truth is out, and the truth feels irreversible. She studies him, tilting her head slightly, as though weighing his sincerity. Then she sighs, softly, almost like she's been holding her breath for too long. Respect is easy to say, harder to prove. For a moment, neither moves. Then, almost without realizing it, she places her hand gently over his on the table. The gesture is small, but it carries more meaning than anything they've said tonight. Her hand is warm, her touch firm but not demanding. It feels protective, almost like she's steadying both of them. He doesn't move, doesn't break the moment. Instead, he lets the weight of her hand ground him. The world narrows. The clinking cups, the low hum of conversation around them, even the music playing faintly over the speakers. It all fades into the background. What remains is the simple, undeniable reality of her touch. She finally speaks, her voice low, almost a whisper meant for him alone. Do you realize how complicated this could be? He nods slowly. Yes, but I also know what it feels like to want something, and know I'll regret it if I don't at least admit it. Her eyes search his, and for the first time, she doesn't look like the woman who always has the answers. She looks human, vulnerable, torn between what's right and what's undeniable. She doesn't pull her hand away. Not yet. Instead, she squeezes his fingers lightly, as if both a warning and an acknowledgement. It's the smallest sign, but to him it feels monumental. Tells him she feels this too, even if she can't say it outright. The moment stretches on, fragile and weighty, until finally she withdraws her hand. She clears her throat, straightens in her chair, her professional composure sliding back into place like a shield. But the softness in her eyes betrays her. The line between them has blurred too much to go back now, and both of them know it. The cafe has long since emptied, the last few patrons slipping out into the night. When they finally step outside, the air greets them with a coolness that feels bracing against their warmed skin. The street is quieter now, lampposts casting pools of light, a few cars rushing past in the distance, and the faint hum of a city settling down. They walk side by side, their steps unhurried, each of them reluctant to end the evening. Neither speaks for a while. Instead, their silence carries weight. Not awkwardness, but a charged stillness, like two people standing on the edge of something they're both afraid to name. He glances at her. The lamplight catches her features, softening the lines of her face, turning her expression contemplative. There's strength in her posture, but also something fragile in the way her arms fold loosely across her body, as if she's holding herself together. Finally, she slows her steps and stops beneath a streetlight. He stops too, instinctively turning to face her. She looks at him, not with the safe, guarded gaze she's worn all evening, but with a quiet intensity that strips him bare. Her hand rises almost hesitantly, as though debating the action. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reaches out and brushes her fingertips along his cheek. It's the lightest touch, a barely there caress, but it sets fire to his skin. Her voice follows, low and fragile, carrying both warning and longing. Do you realize how complicated this is? He doesn't answer right away. The rational response would be to nod, to agree, to step back into safety. But he can't bring himself to move away. Instead, he leans into her touch, his breath catching, his chest tightening with everything he wants to say but can't. She doesn't pull her hand back. Her thumb grazes the line of his jaw, slow and uncertain, yet unwilling to let go. He notices the tremor in her fingers, the small betrayal of someone torn between restraint and surrender. I know, he finally whispers, but complicated doesn't mean wrong. Her eyes flicker at his words, the conflict within her almost visible. For a heartbeat, it seems she'll pull away, retreat into the safety of reason. But instead, her hand lingers, resting against his face like an anchor. The night around them grows impossibly still. He can hear his own heartbeat, feel the warmth of her palm against his skin, sense the fragility of this moment. One wrong word, one sudden move, and it could all break. But neither of them moves. The streetlight hums faintly above them, casting their shadows across the pavement. It feels like they've stepped outside of time, caught in a moment that belongs only to them. Finally, she exhales. Not a sigh of defeat, but of acceptance. Her hand slips down, brushing along his arm before falling back at her side. You make this harder than it should be, she murmurs, though her tone carries no anger. If anything, it carries a quiet confession. He doesn't push further, doesn't try to force words or actions. He just stands there, his gaze steady, his silence saying everything she won't. The walk doesn't last much longer, but every step feels heavy with everything unsaid. They arrive at her car parked beneath a row of trees, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. The lot is nearly deserted now, save for the hum of a streetlight and the distant murmur of traffic. She unlocks her car and rests her hand on the door handle but doesn't open it. Instead, she lingers, her back turned slightly toward him as though gathering courage. He stands a few paces away, his hands in his pockets, heart pounding in the silence between them. Finally, she turns. Her eyes meet his in the glow of the lamplight, and for once, she doesn't hide the vulnerability there. She steps closer, closing the space to just a breath. "You know this isn't simple," she says quietly. Her voice is steady, but there's a softness that makes the words feel more like a confession than a warning. He swallows, searching her face. "I know, but I also know I've never felt something this certain." Her lips curve into the faintest smile. Not playful, not teasing, but touched with something real. She shakes her head gently, as though scolding herself for even standing here, yet she doesn't move away. Instead, she does something far braver. She rests her head against his chest. The world seems to stop. He feels her weight lean into him, the soft press of her temple against his heartbeat, the faint scent of her perfume carried by the night air. His arms move almost instinctively, wrapping around her in a protective, grounding embrace. It isn't a passionate kiss or a reckless gesture. It's something deeper, an admission, a surrender to the truth they've both been circling around. They stand there in silence, bodies close, breaths sinking. The night sky stretches above them, stars faint but steady, like quiet witnesses. She finally speaks, her voice muffled against him. "I shouldn't, but I don't want to stop." The honesty in her words strikes him harder than any declaration could. He tightens his hold, not possessive but steady, as though promising without words that he understands, that he won't take this lightly. When she finally lifts her head, her eyes shine in the dim light, conflicted but alive. She studies him, as if memorizing the way he looks in this moment. Then, with a small, almost mischievous tilt of her lips, she whispers, "Oops or not." The phrase, once playful, now lands with the weight of a beginning. They don't make promises, don't map out what comes next. They simply exist in the fragile beauty of the moment, aware of its complications, aware of the road ahead, but unwilling to deny what's already taken root. As she slips into her car and he watches her drive away, he knows with absolute clarity. Nothing about this connection is an accident. And whatever happens next, tonight has changed them both. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more slow burn age gap romances. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have taken that chance or walked away? I'd love to hear your perspective.